Hello. Wethersfield police and Wethersfield mayors have rules with wire crimes, fabricating the transcripts to pretend conversations with police reports too, with the FBI and other police departments through time. These are not legitimate roles since they were kids being trained or whatever with the military and Newington police departments and locations. Next to Dominic Leparada too, and a Chris, or what's his name? Eric Jensen. A whole bunch of people at Central Connecticut State University and named Smith, involved with a Judge Smith I had to write a complaint about when I was a kid, who has further roles with child offenders, including medical, sexual, and medical and KKK black theme and differences of their sexual groups and family members' roles with the interbranch and foreign and domestic at the same time as names involved with overt criminal enterprises and private ones, a whole bunch of different countries too. Like all these people involved with Korea, even the airline involved with Taekwondo places, with German police and military police, Wethersfield, like with the name Kolvinskis. And he's got his wife involved. He's lying about himself and others and pretending legitimately. Since you got, I never had a classroom in my life. He's a little coward. They pretend other. How and why I know about his roles with mobile gas station because others confessed it before he did from other areas coming over here to pretend that, in other words, lie about what came first. I didn't even know them when him and Mark Violet. They had roles with Hartford Hospital, a whole bunch of names from other parts of Wethersfield, which is a suburb, manifest the way suburbs are manifest since before our founders were born, though, tactically denatured north and south with slavery entrenched. That should be clear to everyone, but there is racketeering worse than war crimes. I'm not even a lawyer, on off all the campuses. I'm not even a journalist. The journalists have been planting evidences on off the campuses where and how used remotely is the difference between the interbranch and their kids as the one standing in relative to instances and like arrests that become part of the syntax and names uses of people and or investigation investigators. These are names using and having used as victims slash hyper victims, self-valued while being used remotely, criminally foreign influenced investigations investigators by putting fake things in databases. For example, there's a Leahy family slash S. There are a whole bunch of people in Leahy families involved with the sabotage of other people spying on little kids and making up things and making illusions with former director of the FBI, with other courts. They have sick roles with veterans homes, spots next to them, military involvements with this, military involvements with the databases at Sandy Hook campuses, at the prison there. There's a Sandy Hook prison who has crimes with people with Connecticut boxing gyms who run them and who go there have that in their syntax. They have rules with the body don't big spot of Billy Grasso, with a whole bunch of people recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. Also with the news, with a Johnny Duke, the AK, the dinosaur boxing, and with and John John Scully. I barely ever had words with him at all, conversation with him at all. Even when one time we drove to Ohio, the year I fought Paul Spadafora. In other words, dear Paul, if someone knows Paul Spadafora, please have him help because these are people involved with the World Trade Center names that are like a one with the name Tomorrow and one with the name Aiella. Recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. They have roles with mayors and with people with child abuses, with the former director of the FBI, with foreign countries, like people from, also with people with their name Rob Rodriguez and Daryl Chandler. They have roles with drugs and medicines crimes. That have roles with DACA and natures of trade agreements that were never, they could never defend themselves and defend the Constitution unabridged simultaneously. And a breaching method showed them that and made them self-value rules with predicate acts with facts, black pupils. Period. So they will not follow mandated law. They search for means to pretend other consciously. That's what's recorded. They already had collusions on all sides of criminal and civil cases. Thank God the difference too. is used differentially worse. The difference between the overt criminal enterprises, the private ones, or the insidiousness of the logic and nature of people A through Z. And with premises treatment shared, criminally fun, leaving out and blaming out other things, other themselves, things our founders communicated to blame on the breaching method. Science Honest would have revealed that the only reason there were 13 colonies because our founders counter extortion. The only reason that was possible is because the other portion of our founders, because one portion of our founders was just the simple Native Americans trying to stay pure, hyper native, the way nature leads our answers and is our questions. Nature being that extent of that identity that is beyond, is greater than and more finite than each subject, and is an active identity of relationship to every subject we have, individually grouped together. In that way, distinctly, not distinctly, and hyper-simultaneously itself, wherein how it is functional being the only identity that is hyper-invisible but still discernible. It is why and is how we are appreciating 6 names for the verb, to appreciate. The 1/3/5 identities of sequence/simultaneous nature. That time are about one, a shared identity of forever nature. This is why both the present participle and the past participle, regardless of which one is used, or if they are used or not used, that is the value of the is a hyper additional with and as the complete body of any verb, which is why we need more than one name for a verb. Because every physical body has what is greater than and more finite in active relativity to it, not as itself, but anyway. With where we have attached to every subject we could be aware of, individually grouped and together. Every part of that is 3 identities of possession of it. 1/3/5. And it is 3 identities of where it is not juxtaposed with matter. Completely. It's 3 natures, 3 identities of relationship to it as itself, where it is juxtaposed with matter. And it is 3 identities of relationship to itself, where and how it is active, juxtaposition, but also a grouped, distinct identity of relationship to itself, distinctly that way, as the active conjunction to everything as its identity. Also as any other identity. It is about different. It is the difference that it is about why and how we have the same colorized and different colorized at the same time. The hyper-simultaneous. So in other words, even why we appreciate a verbal or the discernment of what a gerund is value for. It's for the discernment of the appreciation of this distinct identity of forever nature, which is a distinct identity of simultaneous nature, which is not the only reason I'm referring to it as a hyper simultaneous nature. So, English in the ancient languages were written, any language you can make up is in demonstration of how everything is teaching its identity of relationship to itself, in the only increasing value of that, equally value. And as one singular identity of conjunction, again, to every subject individually grouped in together. And how as the value of what came first. In relativity to it now, in other words, everyone could agree to ignore the significance Everyone could self-value, agreeing to ignore the significance of details regarding the plight/s of Native Americans, which is sickly distinctly from ourselves, prevented the ground's identity relationship to itself and nature's identity relationship to itself. Hyper additionally, as their own identity is simultaneously, slash hyper simultaneously, while all that has been heard or known, besides what our founders actually communicated to us. No, but partially through cipher in the form of decipher. So it's not even debatable. But that debate was gotten away with because there was a hyper sophistication here first. So where and how, for example, our founders had to counter extort the first 13 countries and force them to be a country or to be hurt by and killed, and worse, by the fact, tribute nature, torture, extortion, breaching method, three remedies manifest, having been sustained too. Collusion with a whole bunch of hyper additional motivations, nature's needs, interests apparent for roles. But this was and is right where no one wants to have collusions. But exceptions are made for them. Because this breaching method knew that it would have to keep how exceptions in exception nature works and or have to keep, how nature uses it hyper additionally from while as the ways, for example, finite active group and progressive, conjunctive to with and as. The value of where we know there is. We know during the winter, we know of the spring's value. But now we know of it through systems tactical ulterior from the one that is hyper simultaneous. There are uses of the people who are the quote help, unquote, of the Democrats, of the Republicans, and of the exceptions where that was applied as a shell game, and or the exceptions because the difference of it is being used by the shell game also to measure and maintain other communicated, for example, for our founders, therefore for nature, therefore for the Constitution unabridged, other than they asked, communicated for themselves. See, they are making legal arguments. They refer to it as legal arguments with Judge Napolitano and his sources. The syntax of the United Nations. For example, regarding the relativity note, no theory of people dying in anywhere they're dying as the species body of volume. And with the relativity not left out of where and of how before our founders were born. A whole bunch of ways science honest shows. Insane size change shows the suburbs were designed tactically denatured as a theater while simultaneously the nature's negative value nature progressions, acts, and demonstrations of that. For example, to the people of the suburbs, how they need to get food and to value food coming from other locations. Being and having been employed to an extent by the breaching method, human fact, tribute nature, torture, extortion, slavery method. That also our founders communicated for us to communicate about how, and understand and observe where and how the differences of the collusions of individuals and or of the industries, the names of themselves, employments of themselves where they wouldn't speak for value, leaving out how identity actually is valued. How the premises they rely upon that are only not spoken because they're making natures of debate regarding genocide as treatments, where how they're at the top of the world, self-valuing roles with names A through Z, communicating and having communicated other than our founders communicated to communicate for themselves. And that's self-valued and pretending others simultaneously, that too being used remotely. Black pupils, see the word unabridged. We were supposed to get the Constitution unabridged by addressing the hyper criminally foreign influenced human fact-checking nature breaching method, the hyper extraterritorial, the roles that can be discerned because there were roles forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded that we know about and what is actually recorded with the natures of industry, with what Jim Crow laws are actually about. See the nature of debate about what Jim Crow laws are about. That was assigned and is assigned before it even happened by the breaching method. It already sustained identities. Then further, it knows how we are further identities as Earth's voicing / S per its system. The crow is not the eagle, but where how? In one way, crow is more eagle than the eagle. One way, each note of the music of Western music, all exception, nature, and demonstration, the same thing / S. The notes individually grouped in together. They have the same identity of possession / hyperpossession as why each species of volume is individual grouped and together. Why and how we have the same colorized and different colorized at the same time. And why and how there could be exceptions. And why and how there are revelations with debate and or appreciation, that is a simultaneous appreciation. There's hyperscience. There's a difference between hyperscience, for example, than science / S. And there's a non-difference because science is science. But science has been with formal theories where and how this preaching method assigned the names of the sciences while and after everyone had already been forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded to be shock and awe. To use a phrase, manifest, because of how it makes things like that manifest. With the people using those phrases and only allowed to be heard, speaking for the law, that is being and having been used remotely to keep out screened. The hyper-archetypal criminal enterprise that nature itself shows means for us to blame and to tell everyone to get out of the way and be right at last since semi-ancient times. In other words, this assigned names A through Z to be systems tactical ulterior from how nature, the ancients understood. Nature assigned the difference of names A through Z, the difference of individual grouped difference / S of any nature of difference, even if you make something up, or simultaneously, the same way, any prey. So there are all kinds of trade agreements that never had the ability to defend themselves or the money or value they spoke for simultaneously, because that was only allowed to be existent A through Z, everywhere the species body stands, even if the species body is in orbit around space. And the debate regarding if that's real or not. We're understand what's real about that or not. Such, for example, is used to measure and maintain how we are in zero gravity per the narratives, ignoring that on both sides of issues as they are framed as sides, not just because of the way that is forced at interbranch locations. That is forced by nature manifest. See solid nuclear cell body cell wall /S. See, but this is being exploited, has been exploited. This breaching method assigned roles with the difference between overt criminal enterprises, private ones, per nature's definition of that. We could observe nature demonstrating the difference between criminal and citizens' natures of positive treatments and negative treatments by the most educated simply by having black pupils and an extent of liberated education. Enough. Doesn't even have to be completely liberated to discern the needs to completely liberate the American educational system and free speech and functions by that. See, we have people jumping into other people's conversations in business to hide and to be used as a screen to hide what came first and to hide all the fake things being stacked in every day, collusions with names on all sides of criminal and civil cases, the lawyers, the names at the interbranch locations, tied to them, their family members, names next to their neighbors, because there's a syntax racketeering where this is so I'm not even a lawyer, please form this assigned each age of difference, each age of correlation nature to function for itself, discerning if anybody, even if as a body, as a majority of people, use short words right. That means with the right nature. But that means being led by that which is hyper invisible, not discernible. That though who this guy's a nice guy, that's all led by the difference between that and who's evil. The overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and the intelligence, foreign and domestic, they have collusions together. Right through all their syntax agreements and non-agreements, narratives, and or silences. And the causes of it, and the value of that. All of that is used by a breach method that no one wants, not even them. So they speak about straits, see dire straits. They speak about environmental damages. They left out how the breaching method forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded the ground tactically denatured the means for Native Americans to feed themselves. Only if they were going to be through systems tactical terror from the hyper-native system, therefore Native American systems. Before they were Native Americans, that was sustained. Nature itself trained them to be our founders, a portion of them. That enabled another portion, another third of our founders to counter-extort another third and force them to have no way to defend themselves from the crazy laws against everyone, with time treatments, with facts, and with the nature of facts relative to those crazy laws, relative to where and to how it was manifest, where anyone said or didn't say, and the value of that, which is used simultaneously per nature. Yeah. So there are predicate acts with facts methods that people from Trinity College recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, and people from Central Connecticut State University recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. They have roles also with predicate acts with facts with people, criminally foreign influence uses of databases, and names associated with UConn, Quinnipiac University. This is a polling campus note. The news has been planting predicate acts at locations and directed to pretend it's personal if that's I talked about. These are predicate acts with facts methods. It is nothing personal. All exceptions, exception nature that appear to be in demonstration of other, have a whole bunch of recorded and hyper evidentially recorded proofs of the same thing. Intercities, the intelligence community uses crime methods where and how the breaching method knew they would. Where and how it assigned them as fake identities of integrity relative to where and how nature shows this. And how they get away with hiding this is where we cannot ignore what I caught them doing at each campus I went to in my life. As people increasingly involved with Wethersfield police wire crimes and location/S uses. People from other areas came to my street to record, confess, demonstrate, confirm their roles of predicate acts with people from my area, with people on three corners, at least four corners on Church Street in Old Wethersfield, which is right around the corner and right around the corner from Webb House. And right around the corner. And then again, real quick corner, that's where you're right there from the witch trials place. Also inseparable from Connecticut's inseparable roles from proper understanding of American history and of that counter extortion. That also involves the third volume of our founders having been the volume of that they had to extort at those 13 locations. They had to leave a trail, a forensic trail / forensic trail, as the breaching method knew they would have to. And our founders knew that they would have to lie about their motivations coming up to the Constitutional Convention to get that laughed off as best they could. And then to get laughed off, us to be told to get the Constitution unabridged. See, there are identities that will still buck at that. There are identities of wealth that can't afford discernment of that. Because and they need to pretend other. For example, because of how the sciences are used and have been used remotely. Because of worse, what used collusion/S at all location where it was being and is being sustained and increasingly value and identity of relationship to ourselves. And nature self-value because of how it, in other words, since you guys were kids, you've had criminally foreign influence simultaneously, tactically delusions wrought, summaries of American history, and of the good things and of the bad things, of positives and of negatives, as collusions with the breaching method that needs that as collusions to keep it. So every method, every criminal enterprise, every abridgment of the nature of the people's formal syntax, anywhere the species body is. Nature demonstrates that. Nature has been demonstrating since semi-ancient times. The names A through Z of the sciences have been a certain type of victim/hyper victim, but simultaneously as victim predator/hyper predator, forcing, tricking, hurting, and persuading everyone to speak through others, and or roles planting and or using, having been planted by others, and planting by others. Illusion, fake motivations, fake things relative to where and to how they come with sides of issues, of legal cases. Like, for example, Black pupils. The rights of the state or of the government, the state. they can't explain either one properly because you leave out black people, you leave out the predicate acts with facts method /s. You pretended that things were debatable that were not and are not. Interbranch, they have the FBI has an extent of consciousness that they have roles with KKK themed, black themed police forms. Someone to Mr. McChrystal, please. There are people with inter-services, Navy, foreign and domestic, Air Force, 3 spots at the end of the Burlington Turnpike and all along the Burlington Turnpike. People from Hartford Hospital also have roles with a whole bunch of different countries. They'll work criminal enterprises interstate. They're not legitimately with the military men and women next to the state capitol when I was a kid and I was an adult. They know my name, I don't know their name. And they have roles with interbranch and intelligence switching names, forging names. So the spots next to the state capitol are increasingly involved with names like O'Brien and Cololo, with confessions from people from other locations regarding their roles with them, with judges and prosecutors, and with medical families, foreign and domestic, overt criminal enterprises, and people next to campuses putting fake things in databases together and lying, putting fake motivations. This is leading up to the World Trade Center attack in that context and since. This method, our founders told us to demonstrate the employments. For example, there were only 300-something streets in Hartford, Connecticut. The Institute of Living was founded on the campus of Hartford Hospital in 1822, with slavery still entrenched north and south. With even presidents' voices not strong enough and not educated properly, having come through left criminally foreign influenced campuses, and the difference of that uses with syntax, with logic, and simultaneously with logic's nature. 2, increasingly people, I've never been in the house. I was in the driveway a couple of times for of a John Maiano. They tried to make that exception. You've got people. There's intelligence family that are tricked forth to self-value uses of exceptions that are faked exceptions, and they're not even real exceptions. They're making, in other words, I don't know his family's names. That with that house, I never met them, never saw their eyes. One time, a John Maiano's mother walked by me, and I saw her real quick for 1 second, and we didn't even communicate. Right when I was walking in, Coach Hagenbar involved with the abuses of the leaders of the kids to further their roles and their parents' roles with the abuses of others' kids. Where and how there's a certain type of victim / hyper victim predator / hyper predator that the breaching method built only capable of being, because it needs them to want to pretend motivations for itself. They already blamed on other things, others, ourselves, the real causes of negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures. Also, someone tell Brian Foley. There are a whole bunch of people tied to the name Brian Foley who recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. Fox News and CBS and MSNBC, they have sources. They have prosecutors, one like associated with a Brian Silver and with a Salisbury, with a New Britain Superior Court, involved with ones I don't know, with Hartford's court. I don't know if that was a prosecutor, the girl who said she's intimately tied, or he said she was intimately tied to her. Eric Burgess. And he's one of the ones with foreign and domestic military. After people from Wethersfield recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed roles with criminally foreign influenced locations in West Hartford. He recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed also collusions with the foreign and domestic military through other natures of organized crime like federal evidences crimes, roles with child abusers, abuses, their roles with sense and sensibilities of fire departments and people tied to the names of fire departments and child campuses, like the one right next to the fire department near the Eric Burgess house in West Hartford. They have roles with Russians and Americans. Also, I don't know. I never had a class with Timothy St. Hodge. You know, he was a nice kid. I walked by him a couple of times. I never had a problem with him. In other words, I was only polite to him. But they told me he has something to do with NASA and the people involved with Russians, like with the name Peruta. And the people with my sixth grade class involved with predicate acts with my fifth grade class teacher, who was also involved with predicate acts through the others who forced, tricked her, and persuaded them to remember. Everyone's speaking through others too. No, we never had communications that there are proofs that they put us in fake syntax with each other. The only communications I ever had with him was about he told me to do a maze of a Joe DeMauro, one of the Joe DeMauros, which there are multiple people with the name Joe DeMauro involved with Central Connecticut State University with judges and prosecutors, overt criminal enterprises, private ones, whole bunch of people tied to the name Mazzucato and their bakery in Hartford and the one at the corner of Elm Street in Rocky Hill in Route 3. They have roles all along Route 175, planting evidences in the past. Fake ties to me that's the only exception. I ever saw him off campus. One time at a beach. Also a Mike Roberts. These are people that were involved with planting evidences on all sides of campuses with the names involved with the Wethersfield police with wire crimes, with other police departments when I was a kid and I was an adult. And their confessions over the phone is simultaneously roles with them switching and forging names and confessions tied to that already. And I still haven't had a response to it. So the interbranch is hiding from what is recorded because they already had roles. Also with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and insidiousness of the logic of A through Z. And collusion, even the news too, at corners of streets and next to schools, planting predicate acts roles with medical offenders, foreign and domestic, of the kids, the family members of the intelligence communities that they do tricks on a mass scale, making fake conversations between people who never had conversations by making statements. Like even at Sandy Hook has people involved with the principal child offender that roles that forced it by hiding what I caught them doing with the principal child abuser, which is hyper additional too, and worse than the upskirt pictures he was put in prison for. And the FBI had then and now further recorded roles with them on Twitter, and then they hid this with the sale to Elon Musk of Twitter regarding their roles with someone named Ian with the FBI and the use of that name Ian as people involved with the park, Wethersfield Parks, Newington Parks, mayors and people with the ILO next to the Hartford Parks and next to the Wethersfield Parks have roles with federal evidences crimes and predicate acts with facts. There are men and women that recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed that a Joe Aiello and that his family members are involved with guns crimes and with sexual and medical offenders of kids with overt criminal enterprises and names on off Hartford Hospital and the spots next to them, next to Buckley High School, next to the field next to it, through time with the DeMauro's Market too, and how they switched to where they're near Elm Street and Rocky Hill. All along Elm Street and Rocky Hill are people from Wethersfield who had roles with had conversations with teachers I had that contained confessions recorded a whole bunch of ways, increasingly relative, People have been putting fake conversations with others, fake ties and natures of ties between students, and fake communications with themselves, with everyone around them, including their family members. And exploitations of that is increasingly, for example, behavior racketeering worse than war crimes, right where people are supposed to be not against that. They have the counters to things as collusions with them. These are people involved that with timed uses of elderly homes, people involved with the elderly programs, people involved with the training of the people who run the prisons. Central Connecticut State University has roles with that interstates and internationally. They have roles with people from Mexico recorded, confessed, and some demonstrated, confirmed thing had into conversations where other I've been already having conversations with foreign and domestic families involved with Covington Street in New Britain, for example, since I was a kid. Central Connecticut State University had intelligence families involved, timed collusions with mayors and their family members in the syntax of people. Foreign and domestic medical families have been attaching little kids and their families to fake conversations with themselves. Whole transcripts, they've been using roles with the uses of investigators remotely criminally foreign influenced regarding how they have the audacity to speak for value, where they have the audacity to speak for the exceptions, like those things like threats, legitimate. Half of them are only legitimate because not one legitimate voice for science is allowed to speak. I'll whisper Creek, see black pupils, peer, and stay native, pure, hyper native, pure. We have to discern individually grouped and together. Already possessed, were roles already sustained against themselves with what they sustained against, were sustaining against the Native Americans, and then our founders were born. Native Americans already had to syntactically argue properly. In other words, there was nature was showing them argue with each other, do something about how you guys are being separated from the answers humanity had and would have right now had not been employed the way it did, other to be communicated, even for our founders. Each of the sciences has uses of their short words, tactically abridged / hyper-tactically, to keep measured and maintain self-value. Uses as an inverted function of how the sciences share an identity and why, how there is function by that. This is the hyper additional value of that which is variable, which is why and how. This is also where and how it is functional, being distinct identities of hyper invisible, but still discernible. The parts of grammar are all parts of languages. They're about the invisible but still discernible, and it comes with the hyper invisible but still discernible. And it comes further simultaneously with the value of that. Increasingly value here, or forced from here, lethal hadith, where and how simultaneously a special difference is being demonstrated to us by nature, that we could use it to answer our questions about what to do. So we know that in Russia, in America, and in Ukraine, for example, the suburbs were designed for a torture, extortion, slavery method before our founders were born. It was a method designed to make people need to counter things like criminal foreign influences wrongly. And the whole time, also hyper additionally, too, needing to counter hyper criminal foreign influences. But instead, it assigned other things, others ourselves, to be blamed, like the archetypal criminal enterprises as countries A through Z, when they